Across global newsrooms, journalists blinked in disbelief. Teleprompters paused mid-scroll. Was it a mistake? A lost message? Some kind of diplomatic miscommunication? But it was real. President Ibrahim Traoré of Burkina Faso had just declined the Nobel Peace Prize. Not with bitterness, not with ego, but with a handwritten note that stopped the world. Justice does not need awards, only victory. In a time when most leaders chase headlines and honorifics, Traoré walked away from the highest stage with quiet conviction. Why? Because for him, and for millions across Africa, peace is not what's given from Oslo. It's what's built in the dust, by bare hands and unshakable will. So what kind of leader turns his back on global glory to return to his fields? And what does that decision say about us? When the world finally received confirmation, there were no headlines bold enough to contain the moment. Ibrahim Traoré, the revolutionary president of Burkina Faso, had rejected what many consider the most sacred honor in global diplomacy. The handwritten letter delivered directly to the Norwegian Nobel Committee was just 5 lines long. Yet it carried the weight of centuries. Justice does not need awards, only victory. I am honored, but I cannot accept this prize while my people still bleed, while our land still suffers, and while freedom is still under siege. In one stroke of the pen, Traoré turned what the West saw as a crowning achievement into a statement of unfinished duty. For him, the Nobel Peace Prize was not the destination, but a dangerous detour. Later that day, he addressed the people not from a gilded podium, but from a makeshift platform in Bobo Dioulasso, surrounded not by diplomats, but by cotton farmers and mothers holding infants. He spoke plainly, "I am not a saint, I am not a savior. I am a worker of the soil, and workers do not stop in the middle of harvest to receive medals. We finish the work first, then we feed the village." The crowd stood still, not in confusion, but in awe. He continued, "This prize, if it belongs to anyone, it belongs to the women who walked 5 kilometers to teach under the sun, to the widows who forgave the men who once held guns, to the children who now drink clean water. Let the Nobel be carved into every school wall, every hospital bed, every ploughed furrow, not into a gold medal, not into my name." Then he stepped down from the stage, lifted a shovel, and helped dig a new irrigation trench. That moment, humble and powerful, was not just a local memory. It was a rupture, one that would echo across Africa and across time. The aftershock of Traoré's decision rippled through world capitals like thunder under a clear sky. In Paris, President Anne-Luc Moreau stood before cameras, clearly shaken. She spoke not as a politician, but as someone who had just realized they misread history in real time. "I underestimated him. He was never playing our game. He's building something we still struggle to understand." It was rare honesty from a Western leader, one who had assumed, like many, that the Nobel Peace Prize was the final word in legitimacy. But Ibrahim Traoré, a man from Burkina Faso, had written his own script and torn theirs in two. At the Vatican, Pope Leo XIV paused mid-sermon. His words, spoken with humility, carried the weight of centuries of spiritual authority. There are saints who refuse canonization, not out of pride but humility. Traoré is one such soul. May we have the wisdom to follow, not just admire. In that moment, the church aligned not with power, but with principle. And the world took notice. In New York, at United Nations headquarters, the Secretary General appeared visibly moved. In a rare emotional address, he said, "This is not a rejection. It is a message. That peace must not be celebrated from afar. It must be lived." He didn't name any nation, but the message was clear. Burkina Faso had just given the world a lesson in integrity from a place most maps barely highlight. Across global media, debates erupted. Was Traoré reckless or righteous? But amid the noise, one truth echoed louder than any headline. He didn't want applause. He wanted action. But while the world watched from glass towers, The streets of Burkina Faso had already made up their minds. While the world debated, the heart of Burkina Faso beat loud and clear. On the 17th of August, tens of thousands took to the streets, not in protest, but in pride. From the Grand Mosque to the University of Ouagadougou, people marched holding signs. "We are the Nobel. Traoré chose us, not the world. Justice does not need awards, only victory." Local musicians quickly composed a new folk song, Repli du Silence, a tribute to the man who left the gold behind and gave the people bread. Markets stayed open late. Women danced barefoot in the dust. Schoolchildren wrote essays titled, "What is peace if it does not feed us?" In Thomas Sankara Square, an elderly man who lived through 5 coups told a reporter, "We have had medals before. They were handed to traitors. This time, our leader handed it back. That is why we follow him." Across West Africa, Bamako, Niamey, Conakry, the message was clear. Ibrahim Traoré's refusal was more than a personal act. It was a challenge to old systems, a call for authentic leadership rooted in service. Youth across the continent looked at Burkina Faso with new hope. In a world too often shaped by foreign narratives, here was a leader who spoke for his people, not for headlines. This was no longer just African news. It was a movement, a quiet revolution of values. And deep inside the walls of the Nobel Committee, old traditions began to shake. Across the Atlantic, in homes, newsrooms, and academic institutions throughout the United States, conversations stirred with increasing intensity. What began as a quiet murmur of curiosity soon evolved into spirited debates. People from all walks of life, from everyday citizens watching the evening news, to journalists piecing together the implications, to scholars and students in university lecture halls, wrestled with a question that challenged conventional ideas about leadership and honor. At the center of this global discussion was Ibrahim Traoré, the president of Burkina Faso, whose unexpected decision to decline the Nobel Peace Prize sent shockwaves reverberating across continents. To many in the West, the Nobel Prize is the pinnacle of international recognition, a symbol of achievement and a marker of ultimate legitimacy. But Traoré's refusal cracked open that narrative, inviting the world to reconsider what it means to lead and to serve. Leading media outlets debated extensively. Was Traoré a reckless idealist, throwing away an opportunity that could have elevated Burkina Faso's global standing? Or was he a visionary, rewriting the rules of leadership to reflect something more authentic and urgent? The New York Times editorial board posed a particularly sharp question that resonated widely. How do we measure leadership when the world is obsessed with optics and awards? Is peace merely a photo opportunity, a staged moment for applause, or is it the relentless, unseen toil behind the scenes? Academic forums and think tanks jumped into the fray, dissecting what Traoré's decision might mean for the future of international diplomacy. For decades, the West had shaped peace efforts around summits, press conferences, and high-profile agreements, all carefully choreographed for media consumption. Yet Traoré challenged this paradigm with a quiet but profound statement. Peace is not an event, but a process, not a trophy, but a task. Scholars questioned whether Western notions of peace and progress had grown too ceremonial, too focused on optics, and too disconnected from the harsh realities on the ground. Was the global community too enamored with polished speeches and symbolic awards, while ignoring the gritty work that builds true stability, the rebuilding of communities, the planting of crops, the education of children, and the restoration of trust between neighbors? Observers noted the stark contrast between Traoré's leadership style and that of many contemporary leaders. While others might seize the spotlight, craving headlines and accolades, Traoré chose the soil, the sweat, and the everyday labor that sustains life and dignity. One political analyst famously remarked, "In a world that celebrates press conferences and polished speeches, he digs irrigation trenches." This contrast struck a chord with many Americans, especially those over 40 who had witnessed decades of political spectacle and unfulfilled promises. For them, Traoré's actions were both a challenge and a breath of fresh air. His refusal to accept the prize was not an act of defiance for defiance's sake, but an invitation to rethink what true leadership entails. As the world wrestled with complex global challenges, from economic inequality to political unrest, climate change to pandemics, Ibrahim Traoré offered a compelling new model of leadership, one that values building over branding, service over self-promotion. In a moment when many leaders seemed preoccupied with image management, Traoré embodied the conviction that leadership must be rooted in tangible, transformative action. But even as debates raged across news channels and social media platforms, an urgent question lingered: do we still know how to recognize real leadership? As the dust settled from headlines and intense debates, one truth stood clear to many Americans. The challenge to understand leadership in its purest form has never been more pressing. In a culture often captivated by charisma, celebrity, and spectacle, Traoré presents a radical alternative. He is a leader who refuses fame, who avoids the glitzy stages, and instead focuses on the messy, unglamorous work that takes place far from the camera's glare. He models leadership not as a personal brand or a curated image, but as a collective mission, a shared commitment to community resilience and unyielding labor. In Burkina Faso, his example resonates deeply. His leadership reminds us that real progress is not achieved in grand announcements or ceremonial gestures, but is built furrow by furrow, classroom by classroom, handshake by handshake. It is the slow, steady work of repairing the soil, educating the young, and healing a nation fractured by years of turmoil. For many watching across the United States and the broader Western world, this challenges long-held assumptions about power and leadership. It forces a confrontation with uncomfortable questions. Are our leaders focused on building a legacy or simply managing an image? Do they prioritize service to their people or self-promotion on the global stage? Is leadership about the shine of medals and trophies or the unseen impact on everyday lives? As African news and global media continue to spotlight Traoré's journey, his refusal of the Nobel Prize becomes more than a news story. It is a powerful call to rethink deeply entrenched values. It urges us to place courage and humility above applause, to honor those who sow justice quietly without expecting medals or fanfare. This moment transcends politics. It signals a profound shift in how we understand power, away from spectacle and towards substance. And as the world watches, this question looms large. Can we embrace this new vision of leadership before it's too late? Meanwhile, in Oslo, the hallowed halls of the Nobel Committee felt an unprecedented tension. The refusal from Ibrahim Traoré was unlike anything the committee had ever encountered in its storied history. For decades, the Nobel Peace Prize had stood as a symbol of polished speeches, diplomatic handshakes, and international recognition. It was an event marked by grandeur and ceremony, a crowning achievement for many world leaders and activists. But Traoré's letter and actions shattered this image. His refusal was not a simple no, it was a profound challenge to the very meaning of the prize itself. Behind closed doors, committee members engaged in urgent and heated debates. Should they compel acceptance? Should they ignore the refusal and proceed regardless? Or should they respect Traoré's decision and reconsider the purpose and mission of the prize? One committee member, speaking anonymously, reflected candidly, he did not just decline the prize, he redefined it. We are no longer in an age of grand ceremonies. We are entering the era of shovel diplomacy, peace built from the ground up. Discussions quickly began about the possibility of redirecting prize funds directly into Burkina Faso's grassroots development projects, irrigation trenches, schools, clinics, even without formal acceptance by Traoré himself. This unprecedented approach could forever change the meaning of the Nobel Peace Prize, shifting it from symbolic recognition to direct, practical support. Yet, even amid these possibilities, one fundamental question persisted: what does it truly mean to honor peace? Is it a trophy placed on a shelf, or the quiet, relentless labor of a people determined to build a better future? Across Burkina Faso, Traoré's refusal became a mirror reflecting the world's obsession with fame and spectacle. His choice elevated peace beyond ceremonies and medals. Instead, it anchored peace in the soil tilled by farmers, the sweat of teachers, and the shared struggle of communities rebuilding their nation. Farmers, teachers, and children felt acknowledged not by awards, but by real, tangible action. The Nobel Committee's deep reflection signaled a philosophical shift. Peace is not a prize to be won or displayed. It is a journey to be lived and nurtured every day. For the global community observing, Traoré's decision redefined what leadership means in the 21st century. It is no longer about personal glory or fleeting fame. Instead, leadership is about collective resilience, about lifting a nation through shared effort and unwavering commitment. That moment, marked by a refusal letter, a shovel breaking the earth, and a simple speech, stands as a turning point. It is a quiet revolution, one turning away from applause and toward purpose. And in the powerful words of Traoré himself, justice does not need awards, only victory. Back in Burkina Faso, the story is not just about a country, but about rebirth. It is about a nation rising from decades of struggle, forging its own future through the hands and hearts of its people. Thanks to Ibrahim Traoré, the world is reminded that true freedom is earned, not granted. That justice is not a prize placed on a pedestal, but a living force found in every classroom, every field, and every home. Traoré's words echo like a steady drumbeat of resolve across the nation. We do not ask permission to be free, we rise to claim it. If this spirit resonates with you, if you believe in a world where leadership means action rather than applause, then share this story. Subscribe to follow the journey of an Africa that will no longer bow to false narratives or empty honors. May peace, courage, and justice guide us all today, tomorrow, and for generations to come.